Michelle Doyle rested her forehead against the cool window of her tiny living room. Through the thin glass, the view of Marin Shore's moonlit beach blurred in the downpour. Black clouds twisted across the sky, unleashing a fierce rain that hammered the tin roof of her old seaside home. She inhaled deeply, the damp air heavy with salt and the faint odor of fish from the nearby pier. Her 6-month-old daughter Nora lay in a hand-me-down crib close to Michelle's pull-out couch. Nora had been running a fever for 2 days now, her body hot to the touch, her breathing shallow. Every whimper from the baby amplified Michelle's anxiety. Lightning flashed, illuminating the cramped interior. Most of Michelle's belongings were second-hand: a faded coral sofa, scuffed wooden floors, and walls that had once been white but now wore a permanent grayish tint. On a shelf by the door stood framed photographs of her late husband, Noah. He'd died in a car accident right before Nora was born, leaving Michelle to face motherhood alone. With Noah gone and funeral costs draining her bank account, she'd let her career as a children's illustrator slide into an afterthought. Instead, she cobbled together a living by helping out at Natalie's cafe whenever she could find a babysitter. A crack of thunder boomed, startling Michelle. Nora began fussing, her thin cries scraping at Michelle's heart. The baby's cheeks were flushed, and she breathed with difficulty as though the wet air weighed her lungs down. Michelle crouched beside the crib and placed a hand on Nora's forehead. It was burning up. She needed the special formula the pediatrician had prescribed. It cost more than she wanted to admit, and her wallet was basically empty. She'd used the last of her savings to pay overdue bills. Another clap of thunder reverberated as if mocking her desperation. She reached for her phone, a battered device with a cracked screen. "I can't keep doing this," she murmured under her breath. She tapped on the messaging app to pull up her cousin's number. Miranda. Miranda had offered help from out of state, but Michelle's pride had always held her back. Tonight, pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Nora's fever demanded action. Her hands trembled and her eyes blurred with tears, making it hard to input the digits correctly. She typed out a rushed message. "Miranda, I'm so sorry to bother you. Nora's fever won't go down. I need that special formula, but I'm out of cash. Could you lend me some money until next week? I promise I'll pay you back." She paused, reading the words over, a lump in her throat. The relentless patter of rain hammered her nerves. She hit send before she could convince herself to stop. For a minute, nothing happened. Then her phone vibrated. She grabbed it, expecting Miranda's comforting reply. A single text popped up. "I'm not Miranda. Who is this?" Michelle frowned, suddenly flustered. She double-checked the message thread. She must have typed the wrong number in her haste. A wave of humiliation shot through her. But as Nora let out another weak cry, Michelle closed her eyes, torn between ignoring the stranger or explaining. She typed hurriedly, "I'm sorry. I must have dialed wrong. Please disregard." She set her phone aside and lifted Nora from the crib. The baby's body felt warm, almost feverishly soft against her chest. Michelle paced the living room, swaying gently to calm her. Rain battered the windows, and a gust of wind rattled the front door. No chance she could sleep tonight, not with her baby like this. Her phone chimed again. She shifted Nora's weight, heart pounding as she glanced at the screen. A new text from that unknown number. "Wait, your baby's sick? Do you really need formula for her?" She hesitated, biting her lip. Maybe this person was just curious or worse, a scammer. But she had no one else to turn to at the moment. She typed a short reply. "It's all right. It's my problem, not yours." Almost immediately came another message. "How much do you need, and how can I send it?" Michelle's heart fluttered. A total stranger wanted to help? She thought of Nora's labored breaths. Pride clashed with desperation. She'd never been the type to accept handouts, especially from someone she'd never met. Then Nora coughed, a small, choking sound that made Michelle's eyes burn with tears. She typed, "If you're serious, I'm Michelle. I only need enough for her formula and maybe some medicine. Maybe $50 or $60. The response arrived within seconds. "I'll send $200. That should cover more than formula. Text me your mobile payment info." She stared at the screen, suspicion creeping in. Was this a trick? But the next cough from Nora ended her hesitation. Michelle quickly sent her payment username. Moments later, A notification popped up confirming $200 had arrived in her account. Her breath caught this was real. Tears welled up, equal parts gratitude and disbelief. She felt the baby trembling in her arms. A text followed. "I'm Miles. Let me know if your daughter feels better." Michelle's mind whirled. Miles. She'd never heard the name before. She typed, "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." He replied, "Focus on your baby. That's enough." Lightning flashed again, illuminating the photograph of Noah near the door. Michelle felt a pang in her chest. Part of her was ashamed she had to lean on a stranger's kindness, but another part felt an overwhelming relief. She grabbed her jacket and an umbrella, settling Nora into her baby carrier. Before stepping outside into the storm, she sent Miles one last text. "I don't even know who you are, but thank you. You just helped me more than you know." No response came, but Michelle felt a stirring of hope as she braced herself for the dark, rain-soaked streets. The pharmacy up the road stayed open 24 hours, though it'd be a battle trekking across town in the gale. She clutched Nora protectively and opened the door. A gust nearly tore the umbrella from her hand, and rain lashed her face. She squinted down the empty street puddles glistened under the sporadic streetlights, and palm trees bowed under howling winds. As she started walking, she allowed herself a small smile. Maybe this storm wouldn't be endless after all. Back from the pharmacy, Michelle dripped puddles all over her living room floor as she set the grocery bag down. She'd managed to buy a canister of the expensive hypoallergenic formula, plus some infant fever reducer. The total was more than she'd expected, but thanks to Miles's unexpected generosity, she still had a bit left for her next electric bill, if the power even stayed on in this weather. Nora was asleep in her carrier, her cheeks flushed, but her breathing more regular now that she'd taken medicine. Michelle exhaled shakily, feeling adrenaline slowly subside. The storm still raged outside, but at least her baby was calmer. She slipped Nora gently into the crib and changed into dry clothes, an old sweatshirt and faded shorts. Water dripped from her hair, forming a tiny puddle at her feet. Another flash of lightning lit the living room, followed by a low rumble of thunder. Her phone vibrated. She snatched it up, heart skittering. Miles? She'd half expected him to vanish as quickly as he'd appeared, some angelic figure stepping in just for that single moment of crisis. Sure enough, the message was from an unknown number. She recognized it now as his. "Is your daughter all right?" Michelle stared at the screen. She hesitated a moment, then typed, "She's sleeping now. Thank you. Again, I'm grateful." Before she could lock the phone, another text arrived. "Get some rest too, Michelle." She set the phone aside, overwhelmed by this man's concern. Who was he? Curiosity gnawed at her. Maybe she should see if he had a social media profile. But exhaustion weighed her eyelids, and there was something about his words that felt almost comforting. Pulling a blanket around herself, she slid down onto the couch. Lightning flared again, followed by a sharper crack. The living room lamp flickered. Then everything went dark. A power outage, likely caused by the storm. Michelle sighed. At least the medicine was already in Nora's system. She lit a small candle from a drawer, the flame dancing shadows across the walls. Across town, in a modern cliffside mansion, Miles Harrington stared at his phone, rereading Michelle's messages. He stood in his glass-walled study, the city lights below a haze in the torrential rain. If it wasn't for a random text from a desperate mother, he'd probably be reviewing corporate proposals for Harrington Innovations. Instead, he found himself pulling up her name online. A few references popped up. Small writing about her children's book illustrations, a mention of her husband's fatal accident. He rubbed the back of his neck, unsettled by how easily he'd stepped in to help. Ever since losing his parents in a plane crash years ago, he'd kept people at arm's length. Could he be sure this wasn't a scam? Yet the raw fear in her messages, the glimpses of her baby's distress, it all felt genuine, heartbreakingly so. Something about the situation left him uneasy. He was used to corporate vultures or acquaintances fishing for money. But Michelle's trembling request for formula and the exhaustion in her typed words suggested an entirely different reality. With a sigh, Miles sank into a leather chair by the windows, the patter of rain washing over the glass. He typed a quick note. "Don't overthink this. You did the right thing." He read it, realized he was texting himself in a note app, and chuckled at how out of character it was for him to dwell on a stranger's dilemma. Still, an image wouldn't leave his mind. A young woman trudging through pouring rain, a sick baby in her arms, no one else to turn to. The thought churned something in his gut: empathy, pity, or perhaps a desire to protect. He closed his eyes, thunder grumbling like distant artillery. He barely knew Michelle, yet he felt compelled to see how things played out. In her tiny home, Michelle pulled the blanket tighter, trying to make sense of her swirling thoughts. She recalled her final conversation with Noah before the accident, how optimistic he'd been about starting a family, how he'd joked about her big break as an illustrator. A wave of sadness hit her. Now she was alone, scraping by, reliant on a complete stranger's kindness. Nora let out a soft cry, and Michelle hurried to the crib. The baby's eyes fluttered open, watery but calmer. She tested Nora's forehead, still warmer than normal but not scalding. Michelle hummed softly, pressing a gentle kiss to the baby's damp curls. The hush of the candle-lit room made the swirl of the storm outside feel strangely intimate, as though the world had shrunk to just mother and child. Michelle's phone pinged again, startling her. She grabbed it, reading another message from Miles. "If you need more, just let me know." She replied with a brief, "I will, thank you. Good night." Then she set the phone to silent, not trusting her own racing heart. She wasn't used to leaning on someone else, especially not a man she'd never met. Yet, in a single night, he'd done more for her than her distant relatives or the old friends who'd quietly drifted away since Noah's funeral. Michelle laid back down, letting the candle's flicker guide her thoughts. Outside, the storm raged on, but her mind felt calmer, anchored by the small, bright hope that maybe good people still existed and that perhaps she was allowed to accept help. Just this once. A week after that stormy night, Marin Shore had finally settled back into a humid, overcast calm. The weather forecast threatened another cyclone soon, but for now, an uneasy peace hung over the seaside town. Gray skies loomed above the emerald water, and fishermen at the pier shook their heads, muttering about more trouble coming. In Michelle's living room, now mercifully lit by stable electricity, Nora wriggled on a colorful playmat, babbling at a stuffed seagull toy. Her fever had broken days ago, thanks to the new formula and medication. Relief blossomed in Michelle's chest every time she heard her daughter coo or giggle. Michelle sat cross-legged on the floor, sketchpad balanced on her knees. She was attempting to resurrect her illustration skills, drawing simple, whimsical animals wearing rain boots. The swirl of pencil on paper felt like reacquainting herself with a long-lost friend. When the phone beeped, she almost dropped her pencil, half expecting to see Miles's name. She glanced at the screen. Natalie, her boss at the local cafe. "Hey, we're short-staffed. Can you come in from 4 to 8? Michelle winced. Her shoulders slumped, but she needed the money. She texted back a quick yes, then turned to Nora. "Guess your mama has to sling some coffee tonight." In the corner, a half-open binder reminded Michelle of her mounting bills, rent, water, and that overdue hospital invoice from Nora's birth. She closed the binder, guilt pricking her. She had to find a better way to make ends meet. As if on cue, her phone buzzed again this time. The sender's name made her heart skip. Miles. "How's Nora doing?" Michelle allowed a small smile. She typed, "She's great, thanks to you. Slept through the night like a champ." The reply came quick. "I'm glad. Still working at that cafe?" She hesitated, not sure how much to reveal, but ended up confessing, "Yes, part-time. I used to be an illustrator for children's magazines, but life happened." A pause, then another text. "You ever think of freelancing? I might know someone who needs a children's book illustrator." Her eyebrows rose. Freelancing would pay better, and she could work from home while caring for Nora. But was Miles just being nice? She felt a flicker of suspicion. Then again, the practicality outweighed her doubts. She typed back, "I'd be interested, but I'd want to be sure it's legit." Seconds later, "Give me a day or two. I'll see what I can set up." Placing her phone aside, Michelle rocked on her heels. A spark of hope kindled in her chest. Maybe this could be a turning point, an opportunity to revive her artistic dreams. And she had a hunch Miles was more serious than he let on. Later that afternoon, Michelle dropped Nora off with a neighbor who occasionally babysat when Michelle had to rush to the cafe. The air outside was thick with humidity, the scent of brine wafting in from the harbor. Seabirds cawed overhead, darting between gray clouds. Natalie's cafe, Sea Breeze Coffee, stood at a quaint corner facing the boardwalk. Its teal-painted walls peeled under the salt air, but the neon sign still flickered a friendly, "Open." Michelle slipped inside, greeted by the sweet aroma of brewed espresso and fresh pastries. Natalie, a tall woman with her dark hair and a messy bun, waved from behind the counter. "Thank heavens you're here." She gestured at the small crowd of customers glancing impatiently at menus. "I've been slammed all day." Michelle pulled on her apron, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "No problem, I'm on it." She spent the next few hours pouring lattes, blending smoothies, and delivering sandwiches. But her mind kept drifting to the possibility of illustrating again. The hum of the espresso machine reminded her of the swirl of color in her drawings, the flow of creativity she'd lost after Noah's accident. In a brief lull, Natalie asked, "How's Nora? She feeling better?" "She's good now," Michelle replied, wiping the counter. "Thank you for letting me take that time off." "Of course," Natalie said, giving Michelle a sympathetic look. "I know it's been rough. Did you manage to pay for all that fancy formula?" Michelle felt heat creep up her neck. She didn't want to broadcast her situation, so she only muttered, "I had help." That was all she could bring herself to say. Natalie cocked an eyebrow but let it pass. "Well, if you need extra shifts, let me know. Season's picking up soon." "Thanks," Michelle murmured. By the end of her shift, the sun had dipped behind a layer of thick clouds. The horizon glowed a pale pink where the sky met the water, though storm clouds still lurked to the east. Michelle stepped out onto the boardwalk, exhaustion tugging at her limbs. Her phone buzzed. Miles again? She thought, heart fluttering. Instead, she saw a message from an unfamiliar email address. "We loved your sample sketches. Would you be interested in discussing a short children's book project? Reference from Miles Harrington." Michelle read it twice, eyes widening. So he'd already pulled some strings. A mixture of gratitude and caution filled her. Was it wise to trust him? But this was exactly the break she needed. Hurrying home with a renewed sense of purpose, she picked up Nora from the neighbors. The baby gave her a gurgling smile, reaching out a chubby fist. "We might be okay," Michelle whispered, kissing Nora's forehead. Just maybe. That night, while Nora dozed, Michelle sent a polite, professional response to the potential client. She included a few digital sketches from her portfolio, bright, whimsical scenes that once made her so proud. When she was done, she scrolled through her phone contacts, finding Miles's name. Her thumb hovered over the dial button. She wanted to thank him personally, but it felt too formal. Instead, she shot him a quick text. "Hey, got an email about the book. Thank you. I appreciate this more than you know." She set the phone aside, feeling a little shaky. He replied almost immediately. "Glad to help. Let me know how it goes." She smiled at the screen, letting a soft breath out. Nora fussed in her sleep, and Michelle gently patted her back. Outside, the waves crashed softly, and a warm breeze rustled through the open window. For the first time in months, Michelle felt something stir inside her like a ship changing course, leaving stormy seas behind, at least for a while. The following week brought a humid stillness to Marin Shore, a hush before the next tempest. Locals eyed the churning ocean with caution. Monsoon-like winds were predicted soon. In her small house by the bay, Michelle noticed the air felt heavier each afternoon, the horizon veiled in a bluish haze. Nora's cough had returned, aggravated by the dampness. It wasn't dire yet, but enough to keep Michelle on edge. She stocked up on baby medicine, telling herself it was just normal sniffles. Meanwhile, the children's book client liked her sample sketches enough to propose a short-term contract. It was exactly the break she needed and also a huge responsibility. She'd stayed up late drafting character designs, fueled by cautious optimism. One afternoon, as the sky darkened unexpectedly, thunder rumbled. Nora whimpered, rubbing her nose. Michelle rocked the baby near an open window, inhaling the briny breeze. Then her phone chimed. It was Miles again, asking if she was prepared for the incoming storm. Not really, she typed. House is old, roof leaks, and the power goes out if I sneeze too hard. She was half joking, but concern flickered in her mind. If Nora's cough worsened, they'd need stable electricity for her humidifier. Miles responded with an unexpected proposition. I can arrange for you to stay at a temporary housing facility my company set up. It's safer. Please consider it. Michelle frowned at the message, chewing her lip. She hated the idea of relying on him so much. Yet the memory of that last storm and Nora's fever haunted her. Another crack of thunder shook the window pane as if punctuating the danger. She typed back, I'll think about it. This storm might blow over quickly. That evening, the skies unleashed a torrential downpour. Sheets of rain hammered Marin shore, and strong gusts ripped through palm trees. Michelle pressed a towel under the window frame to catch drips, all the while glancing nervously at Nora, who was fussing more than usual. Flickers of lightning illuminated the living room as the lights flickered ominously. At 9 o'clock, Nora's coughing intensified, tears streaming down her tiny cheeks. Michelle's stomach twisted. She remembered the terror of that earlier feverish night. Her phone buzzed. Miles again. Michelle, I'm serious. The roads might flood. If your baby's cough gets worse, it'll be risky. Let me help. Her pride warred with practicality, but the whimper in Nora's cry decided for her. She swallowed her reservations and texted, All right, where should we go? Within minutes, Miles called. His voice had a reassuring warmth, even through the static. There's a resort my company bought to refurbish. We've turned it into a safe shelter for storms. I'll send you the address. I can also have someone pick you up. Michelle exhaled, holding Nora close. I can't believe you're going to these lengths. Let me. I've got extra resources, and it's meant for emergencies. Lightning flared, painting the walls a harsh white. Michelle nodded, realized he couldn't see her, and said softly, Okay. Thank you, Miles. He exhaled, relief in his tone. Pack what you need. My driver will be there in 20 minutes. Less than half an hour later, headlights sliced through the downpour outside Michelle's house. She peered out, spotting a sleek SUV waiting by the curb. Rain lashed sideways, forming shallow rivers in the street. Gathering a backpack, some of Nora's essentials, and her sketch materials, Michelle braced herself. Wrapping Nora in a waterproof blanket, she dashed out. Water soaked her ankles and thunder boomed overhead. A uniformed driver rolled down the window, calling out, Miss Doyle, we need to hurry. Michelle nodded, hustling to the car. Once inside, she exhaled in relief. The air conditioning hummed quietly, and the driver offered a warm towel for Nora. The baby sniffled, wide-eyed at the lightning. As they drove, the streets were eerily deserted. Flashing hazard lights reflected on the slick roads. In under 15 minutes, they arrived at the top of a hill on Marin Shore's northern edge, where a large resort building stood. Lights glowed from inside, offering a stark contrast to the storm outside. Michelle stepped out, startled by how modern and spacious the building looked. Although it was under renovation, the lobby was clean and well-lit, a large glass roof revealing the stormy sky. Several staff in casual polo shirts hurried around with blankets and bottled water, assisting other residents who'd sought refuge. Miles was waiting near the reception desk, wearing a casual button-down shirt and dark slacks. His hair was damp from stepping outside, a few rebellious strands plastered to his forehead. When he saw Michelle carrying Nora, relief softened his features. You made it safely. He reached out to help with her bags. Everything okay? She nodded, breathless. We're all right. Thank you. A staff member guided them to a room on the second floor. It wasn't luxurious, some furniture was missing, and plastic sheets covered part of the windows, but it had electricity, running water, and most importantly, dryness. A baby crib with fresh linens awaited in the corner, along with a small table holding extra diapers and Nora's specialized formula. Michelle's heart twisted with an odd mix of gratitude and guilt. Miles lingered by the doorway. Will this do? She looked around, her voice low. It's more than enough. I don't know how to repay you. He offered a faint smile. Just focus on Nora. That's all the thanks I need. A peal of thunder rattled the glass. Michelle cradled Nora closer, feeling the baby calm in the stable air-conditioned environment. She's coughing a lot. I hope it's just the humidity. Miles's gaze flicked to Nora. Something in his eyes hinted at personal empathy, but he kept his tone measured. If it gets worse, let me know. We have a medical staff on site. Michelle swallowed the knot in her throat. Everything he'd done for them, the money, the project lead. Now this safe haven left her struggling to balance gratitude and suspicion. Yet standing here with the baby in her arms, she realized maybe some people really did help without hidden motives. She placed Nora down in the crib. A tension uncoiled in her shoulders as the baby settled quietly, lulled by the hum of the air system. Michelle turned to Miles, who was still waiting, as though making sure she was genuinely okay. With a surge of courage, she said softly, "I don't understand why you're being this kind, but thank you." His expression was unreadable for a moment. Then he gave a small shrug, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "Let's just say I've been lucky in life, and I'd rather see my resources used for something good." He stepped back, as if catching himself from saying more. "Try to rest. I'll check on you tomorrow." Michelle nodded, her chest tightening with an emotion she couldn't quite name. "Good night, Miles." He slipped out, leaving her with the soft lull of Nora's breathing and the distant rumble of the storm. The overhead light flickered once, but held steady. Outside, wind shrieked through palm trees and battered the hillside. Inside, for the first time in a long while, Michelle felt an unexpected calm. Perhaps this stormy season in Marin Shore wasn't just about destruction. Maybe it was about washing away old fears, opening doors she never thought she'd walk through again. The next morning, sunlight crept through the tall windows of the old resort on the hill, chasing away lingering shadows from the previous night's storm. Michelle blinked awake in the temporary bedroom Harrington Innovations had set up for people displaced by the flooding. The thick curtains fluttered, letting in a warm, salty breeze that smelled faintly of seaweed and drenched palm leaves. Nora stirred in the portable crib, her tiny hands stretching toward the ceiling. Michelle stepped closer and gently stroked her daughter's hair, relieved that Nora's cough had eased. The baby peeked up with bright eyes, giving a soft coo as if to say, "Mommy, I'm fine now." Michelle's mind flashed back to the chaos of last night, the gusting wind, water seeping through her living room window, and Miles's calm voice on the phone urging her to seek shelter. She still couldn't believe how quickly he'd arranged everything. Before she could second-guess herself, a dedicated driver had whisked her and Nora to this hilltop resort, a place that once welcomed vacationers, but was now a hurricane-resistant safe spot. She picked up her phone, half expecting a message from Miles. Sure enough, a single text read, "Let me know if you need anything else. I'll be by later." She smiled, typing a short thanks. Then she set the phone aside and gazed at the modest room. Bare walls, a single dresser, half-dismantled light fixtures. Sheets of transparent plastic lined one corner where workers were repainting. Despite the unfinished look, the essentials were there: clean linens, bottled water, electricity. It felt like an oasis compared to her little house swamped by the storm. After changing Nora's diaper, Michelle ventured into the hallway. The resort's main foyer bustled with staff in light blue polos. They distributed blankets and hot beverages to a few other families. Some children dashed around in soggy flip-flops while parents tried to keep them close. Bright patches of sunlight streamed through the glass roof overhead, illuminating a cluster of potted palms near the reception desk. Suddenly, Michelle spotted a familiar figure tall, with sandy brown hair and a quiet confidence. Miles Harrington stood in conversation with a resort employee. He was dressed casually in dark jeans and a simple button-down, the sleeves rolled up as though he'd been moving furniture. She hesitated, hugging Nora to her chest, not sure if she should interrupt. But Miles caught sight of her. His face lit up in a subdued smile, and he excused himself from the staffer before striding over. "Morning," he said gently, gaze flicking to Nora. "How's our star patient?" "Better." Michelle couldn't help the ripple of gratitude in her voice. She slept all night. No fever, no cough attacks. "Great." He shifted, looking slightly uncomfortable but genuine. "We're organizing some medical checkups later if you want Dr. Lucas to take another look, just to be safe." Michelle nodded, biting back the immediate protest that she could handle it on her own. Something about Miles's concern felt deeply reassuring, and she realized she was tired of managing every crisis solo. Thank you. I'd appreciate that. A staff member passed by, carrying a tray of steaming coffee cups. Miles gestured politely for two. He handed one to Michelle. This place isn't five-star anymore, but it's better than being stuck without power in the lower parts of town. Michelle sipped, wincing at the bitterness but grateful for the warmth. The day was already humid, yet her body craved coffee. So did you always plan to convert this resort into an emergency shelter? He let out a small laugh. Not exactly. Harrington Innovations bought this property to renovate into a wellness retreat. But after last season's floods, we realized it could also serve as a safe haven during storms. Figured I should use some of my resources for the community. He paused, looking at the families gathered. It's still a work in progress. Michelle glanced around, noticing half-finished murals on the walls, stacks of new mattresses waiting to be unwrapped. It's impressive how quickly it all came together. Miles shrugged modestly. We have a solid team. Anyway, I'm glad you and Nora are okay. That's the important thing. She studied his expression, a blend of relief and lingering tension, as if he carried a burden he rarely shared. For a moment, she wanted to ask about his parents, about how losing them had shaped him. But she held back, unsure if that was too personal. She was also painfully aware that she barely knew him outside of these acts of kindness. He cleared his throat. I've got a few calls to make. Feel free to explore. There's a small lounge upstairs, a makeshift kids area, though it's more like a corner with toys. His lips curved in a half-smile. If you need anything, let me know. I'll be around. Michelle gave him a grateful nod. Thank you, really. He nodded once, then headed off, greeting staff members by name and asking about any immediate problems in the building. Nora squirmed in Michelle's arms, and she pressed her cheek against her baby's soft hair. A strange sense of hope bloomed inside her, like the first clear sky after a long storm. Later that afternoon, Michelle ventured to a bright corridor on the second floor where large windows overlooked the bay. Despite the battered shoreline, Marin Shore still held a sort of rugged charm. Fishing boats bobbed near the broken pier, and a handful of gulls circled overhead. Salt-laden gusts seeped through the cracked glass, stirring her hair. She found a quiet lounge area with a few tables and chairs, plus an old upright piano pushed against the wall. The place smelled faintly of wet plaster and floor polish. She settled Nora into a makeshift playpen on the carpet. The baby gurgled contentedly, grabbing at a plush octopus toy someone had donated. Pulling out her sketch pad, Michelle used a pencil to outline a playful scene of children dancing in a summer rain. Each stroke felt like rediscovering her sense of self, the old Michelle who once believed in bright colors and happy endings. Suddenly, footsteps sounded behind her. She turned to see Miles's assistant, Celia, a petite woman with short black hair and a poised, no-nonsense demeanor. Celia offered a kind smile. Hi, Michelle, right? Michelle nodded. Yes. You're Celia? That's me. Miles asked me to check if you need anything. Celia glanced at the sketch pad, eyes flickering with curiosity. That's beautiful. You're an illustrator? Trying to be, Michelle said shyly. I used to do it professionally, but life happened. Celia's expression softened. Hey, no judgment. Life's complicated. Anyway, I wanted to mention that Harrington Innovations has an ongoing project for children's health campaigns. Miles said he'd connect you with the creative team if you're interested. Michelle paused, heart fluttering. She remembered Miles hinting about freelance work. I would be, yes, definitely. Great. I'll forward your samples to them. Could you email me a short portfolio? Michelle's cheeks warmed. I can do that, yes. Thank you, Celia. Celia tapped at her phone, thumbs flying. No rush, but as soon as possible. We'll see if it aligns with the current designs. She smiled again at Nora, who blinked from behind the playpen bars. What a cutie. If you need a babysitter while you finalize your stuff, the staff around here are friendly, or I can help if I'm free. Touched by the offer, Michelle nodded. That's really generous. She exhaled softly. I feel like I owe everyone so much already. Celia shook her head. Trust me, we're all just doing our jobs. Miles, he has a big heart. Sometimes it's bigger than he knows what to do with. Her eyes flicked away as if she'd said too much. Anyway, I'll let you get back to your art. With that, she left, footsteps echoing down the hall. Michelle gazed at the door for a moment, then looked at Nora. "Guess we might be working on a real project, little one," she murmured, her voice trembling with cautious excitement. "Things are changing, huh?" Nora responded by smacking the plush octopus, squealing in delight. Michelle returned to her sketching, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Memories of Noah flashed through her mind, how he'd teased her about stashing colored pencils in every room of their old apartment, how he'd believed in her talent more than she did herself. It still hurt to think about him, but in a gentler way now, as though the pain had softened around the edges. She recalled the first night she'd texted Miles by mistake, how desperate she'd felt, how alone. Now, she wasn't sure what to make of this improbable ally in her life, but she was grateful. Perhaps it was okay to accept help. She wasn't turning her back on Noah's memory. She was just navigating the storms of life as best she could. Outside, the clouds drifted, revealing a swath of bright blue sky over the ocean. The water shimmered under the sun, as if offering a promise of better days. Michelle allowed herself a moment to embrace that promise, pencil gliding across the page, capturing hope in every line. 2 days later, the tropical storm warnings lifted. Marin Shore found itself drenched, but intact puddles lined the sidewalks. Uprooted palms lay scattered near the roads, and a few wooden fences had blown apart. But the air felt renewed, sweet with the scent of wet earth and ocean breeze. Michelle stood outside the resort's grand entrance, waiting for Miles's SUV to pull around. The staff had deemed her home safe enough to return to, though she'd have to mop up water damage and air out the place. In the swirl of chatter among evacuees, many were thanking the Harrington Innovations team for their support. Nora rested on Michelle's hip, wide-eyed at the bustle of folks gathering luggage and children. The baby's cough had nearly vanished. Dr. Lucas had checked her thoroughly, pronouncing her healthy but advising caution with damp environments. A honk sounded. Michelle spotted the black SUV, tinted windows reflecting the midday sun. Miles stepped out from the driver's side, a casual grin on his face. "Hey, sorry for the wait. Had to swerve around a downed tree." Michelle joined him with a rueful smile. "No problem, thanks again. You've done too much, honestly." He waved that off, eyes flicking to Nora. "Ready to head home?" Michelle sighed. "As ready as I'll ever be." They loaded her small duffel bag and the baby gear, then climbed inside. The car smelled faintly of leather, and the pine-scented air freshener dangling from the rearview mirror. With a gentle hum, Miles started down the winding road away from the resort. As they wound downhill, the landscape opened up a view of lush greenery and the shimmering coastline. Sunbeams glistened on every wet surface, and the breeze carried a hint of salt. Michelle stole a glance at Miles's profile. He seemed focused on the road, jaw set, shoulders relaxed but posture upright. "Must be a relief to see the storm pass," she ventured softly. "Yeah," he replied, turning the wheel carefully around a bend. "I never get used to them, though. Every time a storm hits, I remember how vulnerable everything is." His voice had a subdued undercurrent, like he was recalling some personal memory, but he offered nothing more. They passed a newly formed lagoon near the broken pier, where groups of workers and volunteers stacked sandbags to reinforce the shoreline. Michelle's heart squeezed at the sight her neighbors, her community. It was a hard life, but the townspeople pulled together, each storm forging deeper bonds. Soon they reached her street. Puddles and silt clogged the gutters, and a few fallen branches littered yards. Michelle's modest single-story house looked a bit forlorn with muddy streaks on the outer walls, but at least it was standing. Miles parked along the curb, stepping out to hold the passenger door for her. She cradled Nora and approached the front door. Inside, the musty smell of old water hit her nose. The living room floor glistened with moisture. She grimaced. "Guess I'll need a bucket and some disinfectant." Miles followed her in, scanning the damage. "The ceiling's okay, no leaks from above." He pointed at the window near the sofa. "Most of the water came in through here." Michelle set Nora on a relatively dry blanket. "I can handle the cleanup." An uncertain tension rippled across his face, as though he wanted to insist on helping but didn't want to push her boundaries. "Let me at least move that wet furniture," he offered quietly. "Or check if you have any damage to your electric outlets." She hesitated, pride prickling. But the memory of how he'd been there for every other crisis softened her walls. "All right," she relented with a sigh. "I'd appreciate it." They worked side by side, Miles hauling a soggy rug onto the porch, Michelle carefully wiping down the floors. Their occasional conversation was dotted with mild humor. He teased her about the cartoonish seagull magnets on her fridge. She teased him about the pristine, business-casual shoes now stained with muddy water. The sun slanted through the open door, dust motes dancing in the golden light. Nora, propped up in her bouncy seat, watched with bright curiosity, occasionally squealing in excitement whenever Miles carried something heavy. It felt oddly domestic, a fleeting glimpse of normal life, two adults tidying a house, a child babbling in the background, the hush of an afternoon after a heavy storm. At one point, they paused for water. Michelle poured them each a glass from the jug she'd stashed in the kitchen. She leaned against the counter, brushing damp hair from her face. "You know," she said softly, "I never planned on letting a stranger do so much. But here we are." Miles's lips quirked. "Trust me, I don't go around meddling in random people's lives. Something about your text that night just hit me." He shrugged, glancing at Nora. "I guess I thought maybe I could help a little." Warmth spread through Michelle's chest, tinged with the ache of gratitude she couldn't fully express. "You more than helped, and the freelance possibility with your company that could be a real lifeline." He sipped his water. "Celia said you have great potential. I'm sure the creative team will be impressed." Before she could respond, Nora fussed, her tiny voice echoing in the freshly scrubbed living room. Michelle hurried to pick her up, lightly bouncing her. The baby curled a fist around Michelle's damp sleeve, content to be close. Miles checked his phone briefly. "I should head out soon. My schedule's kind of insane after all the storm chaos, but if you need anything, equipment, babysitting, an extension cord, text me." Michelle felt a swirl of conflicted emotions, relief, vulnerability, and a stirring she hadn't felt since before Noah's death. Her gaze met Miles's steady eyes. "Thank you," she said for what felt like the 1,000th time. "I owe you." "Not how I see it," he murmured, "just returning some good karma." He offered a hint of a smile, then headed to the door. At the threshold, he paused, glancing back at mother and child in the patch of sunlight. His eyes flickered with something she couldn't quite name: concern, affection, maybe both. Then he nodded farewell and slipped outside. Michelle listened to his SUV rumble away, the noise fading down the street. In the hush that followed, she realized her heart was pounding a little too fast, and she couldn't blame it on the leftover adrenaline of cleaning. She rocked Nora gently, mind spinning with questions about what lay ahead. It wasn't just the prospect of stable freelance work or the gratitude she felt toward Miles. It was the sense that he genuinely cared, that maybe in this battered coastal town of storms and heartbreak, second chances could surface like sunbeams after a hurricane. The following week, Marin Shore vibrated with a new energy residents eager to resume normal life after the storm. Fishing boats ventured out at dawn, surfers tested the waves, and fruit stands reopened along the dusty coastal highway. The air felt thick with humidity, but at least the sky remained cloudless, offering a much-needed break from nature's fury. Michelle woke up that morning with a bundle of nerves dancing in her stomach. She glanced at her phone, a message from Miles confirming a lunch plan. "There's a seafood place by the pier, be ready around noon?" She stared at the text, exhaling slowly. This would be their first real outing together, outside the context of crisis or errands. She dressed Nora in a light sundress, complete with a small sun hat. The baby giggled, as if sensing Michelle's anticipation. Then Michelle rummaged through her closet, settling on a simple floral blouse and jeans, a dash of tinted lip balm. She tried to ignore the flutter in her chest. "It's just lunch," she told herself. "He's done so much for us. A meal by the ocean is not that big of a deal." By the time Miles's car pulled up, the sun was blazing, reflecting off shallow puddles that hadn't fully evaporated. He emerged wearing relaxed khaki pants and a short-sleeved linen shirt, looking effortlessly cool in the mid-morning heat. "Hey," he greeted with an easy smile, opening the passenger door. Michelle tucked Nora's stroller in the back, then settled the baby into a rear-facing car seat Miles had installed. "Where'd you get the seat?" she asked, surprised. He grinned, shrugging. "Borrowed it from a friend at work. Thought it'd be safer than having her on your lap." "Thanks," Michelle said softly, impressed once again by his foresight. They drove past the familiar battered coastline, the sea to their right, shimmering like crushed diamonds under the high sun. Michelle lowered her window, letting in a gentle breeze. She tried not to overthink the situation, but couldn't help noticing how her heart pounded every time Miles glanced her way. Soon they arrived at a quaint spot near the fishing pier, a small restaurant with a weathered sign reading "Shoreline Catch." The facade was painted in peeling turquoise, and an open patio faced the water. Picnic tables with umbrellas dotted the deck, and a few patrons slurped oysters while gulls squawked overhead, hoping for scraps. A hostess led them to a corner table with a partial view of the ocean. Michelle secured Nora in a portable baby chair, the infant gazing wide-eyed at the bright new setting. The server arrived with menus laminated to protect from salt spray. As they sat, a playful breeze ruffled Michelle's hair, bringing with it the tang of brine and cooking spices. She inhaled deeply, feeling a sense of freedom. "I haven't been out like this in a long time," she admitted. Miles offered a gentle nod. "You deserve a break from storms and everything else." They looked over the menu. Michelle's gaze lingered on fried shrimp and grilled snapper, while Miles pointed out the fresh crab cakes. They placed their order, then fell into a comfortable chatter about Nora's progress, the possible children's book project, and how the town was recovering. Their conversation flowed more naturally than Michelle expected. She learned that Miles used to visit Marin Shore as a child. His parents had owned a beach house down the road, though it was sold after they passed away. The slight tremor in his voice when he spoke of them sparked Michelle's empathy. At one point, Nora let out a little whine, and Michelle instinctively reached for the diaper bag. But Miles was faster, retrieving a small plush seahorse to distract the baby. Nora's fussing turned into coos, and Michelle found herself smiling at the sight of this poised CEO crouched next to her daughter, making gentle shh sounds. "You're really good with her," Michelle remarked quietly. Miles straightened, ducking his head a bit. "I've been practicing. Mostly from YouTube tutorials on how to soothe babies," he joked, cheeks flushing ever so slightly. Michelle laughed, a genuine bright sound that felt new to her own ears. The tension in her shoulders melted away, replaced by a sweet gratitude. She found it oddly endearing that a man of his stature would watch baby care videos just to help her child. Their food arrived, accompanied by the vivid chatter of seagulls overhead. Michelle cut bite-sized portions for herself, occasionally feeding Nora some mashed potatoes from her plate. Miles savored his crab cakes, occasionally offering Michelle a taste. The tangy sauce and fresh ocean flavors reminded her that life could be more than just survival. As the meal wound down, a subtle hush settled between them. Michelle caught a glimpse of a strange look in Miles's eyes, affection, curiosity, maybe a spark of something else. It sent a thrill through her, mingled with the old ache of remembering Noah. Guilt flared for a moment, but she forced herself to breathe. She wasn't erasing Noah by acknowledging this connection. She was simply living. After settling the check, Miles insisted on paying, ignoring her protests. They strolled the short boardwalk behind the restaurant. The midday sun glinted on gently rolling waves, and a handful of families cast fishing lines from the pier. Michelle pushed Nora's stroller, while Miles walked beside her, both quiet, content in the easy companionship. "Feels like ages since I had a calm moment like this," Michelle admitted, eyes on the horizon. "No crisis phone calls, no storm warnings." Miles nodded, slipping his hands into his pockets. "I'm glad we can enjoy it, though Marin Shore always keeps us on our toes. Another storm could brew any week." She turned to face him. "Doesn't that bother you? Knowing everything you build could be threatened by the next hurricane?" He studied her for a second, brow furrowing. "It did at first, but I've learned that sometimes the best you can do is prepare, adapt, and keep going." He glanced toward Nora. Same with life, I guess. Michelle followed his gaze, seeing the baby dozing under the shade of the stroller's canopy. A soft breeze stirred Nora's curls. Michelle felt her own eyes sting with sudden emotion. I used to be scared of moving forward like I was betraying Noah or something. She closed her lips, unsure why she was confessing this so openly. Miles's expression softened, and he carefully placed a hand on the stroller's handle. You're not betraying him by living. You're honoring him by giving Nora the best life possible, and maybe letting yourself find happiness again. Her heart pounded. She swallowed hard, torn between tears and a smile. Before she could reply, a group of tourists holding cameras ambled past, temporarily breaking the moment. She pulled in a shaky breath, nodded, and gave him a timid grin. They left the pier after a while, neither rushing nor lingering too long, as if both understood they were tiptoeing into new territory. On the drive back, a gentle hush settled, the sound of the ocean fading behind them. Nora snored softly in her car seat, lulled by the ride. When they reached Michelle's home, Miles parked under a palm tree. She unbuckled Nora carefully. The baby stayed asleep, her chubby cheek pressed to the car seat's cushion. Miles cleared his throat, turning in his seat to meet Michelle's gaze. This was nice, he said in a voice that vibrated with a kind of hesitant warmth. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak without revealing too much. Yes, it was. He left it at that. She stepped out, gently extracting Nora, and he handed over the diaper bag. As she stood by the curb, a breeze brushed her hair across her face. She glanced up at him through the open window. Thank you, Miles. For everything. He nodded, lips curving into a slight smile. Have a good afternoon. Text me if you need anything, or just to talk, okay? She managed a quiet, okay, then watched as he drove off, the SUV's engine fading down the sunlit street. For a few beats, she remained there, heart fluttering like a fragile bird, realizing that something between them had shifted during that simple seaside lunch. Over the next few weeks, Michelle and Miles found a new rhythm, a gentle dance between everyday demands and the unspoken spark that bound them. Michelle dove into the children's book project, exchanging emails with the creative team at Harrington Innovations. She spent late nights sketching lively characters, talking dolphins and curious seahorses while Nora slept soundly in her nursery. Miles, on his end, juggled expansions for his company and ongoing community work, yet he always seemed to find time to check on Michelle. Sometimes he swung by with groceries, claiming he'd bought too much. Other days, he took a quick coffee break at Natalie's cafe, where Michelle still worked part-time to stabilize her finances. One cool afternoon, Michelle found herself sitting on a bench along a newly repaired section of boardwalk waiting for Miles. Seagulls soared overhead, the tide rolling in with rhythmic whooshes against the pylons. Nora sat in her stroller, babbling at the swirl of baby fish darting in a shallow tide pool. Suddenly, a flash of light to her left caught her attention, a camera lens pointed in her direction. Michelle stiffened. She squinted, noticing a local reporter fiddling with a camera phone, snapping pictures. Maybe they recognized Miles's name. The uneasy memory of that earlier tabloid fiasco fluttered through her mind. She tried to ignore it, but the reporter approached with a cordial grin. Excuse me, you're Michelle, right? Michelle Doyle? The man's voice was polite, but his eyes glinted with curiosity. Her pulse kicked up. Who's asking? I'm Jared from Marin Shore Gazette. I recognized you from that piece about Miles Harrington's philanthropic shelter. Any comment on your association with him? Michelle swallowed hard, reflexively adjusting Nora's sun hat. She recalled the swirl of rumors after that last article labeled her a mystery single mom. She forced a polite, tight-lipped smile. I'm just someone he helped during the storm. That's all. Jared's camera hung around his neck. Sure, but there have been rumors you two are, well, closer than just storm survivors. The folks around town... Look, I appreciate your interest. She tried to maintain calm. But I'm not discussing my personal life. Excuse me. She turned away, bristling at how her private struggles might become gossip fodder. A wave of shame and anger churned in her chest. What if this stirs up old judgments, people calling me a gold digger or claiming I'm using Miles's money? Before she could dwell on it, Miles appeared, strolling along the boardwalk in a crisp white shirt and dark slacks. He spotted the reporter and instantly tensed. "Everything okay?" The reporter aimed a casual wave. "Just asking a few questions for a local interest story, Mr. Harrington." Miles's gaze hardened momentarily, but he kept his voice calm. "We're here for a peaceful walk, not an interview. I'd appreciate your respect for privacy." Jared offered a half shrug. "Of course, no problem." He gave them a nod and backed away, though Michelle caught him snapping one last photo from a distance. Her cheeks flamed, the heat of humiliation rising. Miles inhaled slowly, then turned to Michelle and laid a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry. Sometimes word gets out I never meant for you to be in the spotlight." She pressed her lips together, trying to suppress a swirl of emotion, fear, frustration, a hint of embarrassment. "I just hate the idea that people think I'm mooching off you. It's not true," she blurted. His grip on her shoulder tightened reassuringly. "I know. Let them believe what they want. You and I know the truth." He paused, gaze flicking to Nora. "We're just figuring things out, and that's okay." The tension eased a bit at his words. She nodded, forcing a small smile. "Yeah, you're right." But inside, she felt a tremor of uncertainty. She wondered if she was strong enough to handle the scrutiny that came with his wealth and local fame. Together, they continued down the boardwalk, ignoring the prying stares of a few passers-by who recognized Miles. He pointed out the newly rebuilt section of the pier, describing how Harrington Innovations had donated materials. His voice warmed as he spoke about wanting Marin Shore to thrive. Michelle listened, impressed by his commitment, but still wary of what gossip might swirl around them. That evening, as the golden sunset haloed the shore, Miles walked Michelle back to her front door. The crickets chirped in unison, and a faint breeze carried a tang of sea salt. Nora dozed in her stroller, lulled by the motion. Michelle paused on the small porch. "Thanks for today," she said quietly. Even with the unwanted photographer, it was nice. Miles offered a gentle smile. "I'm sorry if it upset you. If you ever want me to handle it, like issue a statement or something, I can." She shook her head. "It's okay. I don't want my life under a microscope, and I don't want people thinking I'm using you." A soft empathy filled his eyes. "People will talk no matter what, but I do understand. If you'd rather keep things low-key, I respect that." His understanding soothed her nerves. She inhaled the sweet smell of night-blooming jasmine near her porch. "For now, let's just take it a day at a time." She glanced down at Nora, who was stirring gently. "That's enough for me." Miles nodded, stepping closer, close enough that she felt the warmth of his presence. His gaze flicked to her lips, then back to her eyes, a question unspoken. Heart thudding, she was tempted to lean forward. But Nora let out a tiny whine, and Michelle reflexively bent to lift her daughter from the stroller. Their moment passed in an exhalation. Miles cleared his throat, forcing a light chuckle. "The littlest chaperone," he murmured fondly, reaching to stroke the baby's hair. "Good night, Michelle. Sleep well." She cradled Nora, voice soft. "Good night, Miles." He walked away, footsteps fading into the dusk. Michelle went inside, her home feeling both comforting and lonely at once. As she settled Nora into her crib, her pulse still fluttered, remembering the way he'd looked at her. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the echoes of an emotion that was slowly taking shape, hope, longing, maybe love in the distance. Yet she reminded herself that life in Marin Shore was never simple, and neither was love. If they were to continue down this path, they'd have to navigate storms both literal and metaphorical. But for now, she let the warmth of his kindness flow through her, a gentle wave soothing old scars, guiding her forward into unfamiliar but promising waters. Miles Harrington, secret billionaire CEO, spotted with single mom at Marin Shore Pier. Her eyes skimmed the subheadings, insinuations about an unknown woman and baby sightings, speculation that she was just another gold digger chasing Miles's fortune. Stomach twisting, Michelle scrolled down to see photos from the boardwalk, the ones that reporter had snapped. There she was, pushing Nora's stroller, with Miles standing protectively beside them. Anger flared hot and fast, but so did embarrassment. She glanced at her sleeping daughter, guilt tugging at her conscience. This can't be happening again. She remembered the swirl of rumors from the earlier paparazzi runin, only now it felt more invasive, because the article had identified her first name and carried unsubtle digs at her mysterious background. Nora let out a small cry, probably sensing Michelle's tension. Trying to steady her breath, Michelle lifted the baby into her arms. "It's okay," she whispered, pressing her cheek against Nora's soft curls. "I'll figure this out." Her phone dinged again this time, an incoming call from Miles. She stared at the screen, nerves buzzing. What could she even say? Finally, she hit accept. His voice came through, quiet and tense. "I guess you saw it already." "Yeah," Michelle muttered, shifting Nora so the baby wouldn't press buttons on the phone. "I'm a little freaked out, to be honest." He exhaled. "So am I. I had no idea they'd spin a story that fast. I'm sorry it's putting you in the spotlight." A pause crackled over the line. I should have told you earlier about my position with Harrington Innovations." She pressed her lips together, unsure if frustration or hurt won out. "You mentioned you were in charge, but you never said fully. I didn't realize you owned the entire company that you—" "I know." There was a muffled edge to his voice, like he was pacing. "I tried to keep my personal life low-key, especially after losing my parents. Dealing with constant speculation, fake friends, it's not something I handle well, so I didn't volunteer details. I'm sorry." Her heart twisted at his sincerity, but the sting of betrayal pulsed. "I asked you once if you were just an average guy. You laughed it off, but you never told me you were a billionaire CEO. That's huge, Miles. And now these articles—" She squeezed her eyes shut, a wave of anxiety building. "They're painting me like some gold-digging mother." "It's not true. You know that." His voice trembled with concern. "Michelle, I wanted you to see me as just a man, not a walking checkbook. That was the entire reason. But I didn't think it'd blow up in your face." Silence hung, broken only by Nora's tiny hiccup. Michelle bit her lower lip, tears threatening. I need time," she finally said. "This is too much, Miles. I can't handle half-truths or paparazzi messing with my life." He sounded like he wanted to argue but held back. "I understand. If you need space, I'll respect that. But please know I never wanted to hurt you or Nora." She exhaled sharply, blinking at the sunlight creeping along the floor. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll reach out when I figure out what to do. Goodbye, Miles." She ended the call before emotion could trap her into comforting him. She stared down at Nora's wide eyes, tears brimming. She didn't want to lose the genuine kindness Miles had shown, but how could she trust him now, amid revelations about his real identity? Clutching Nora close, Michelle opened the old laptop on her kitchen table, half tempted to email the Harrington Innovations team to withdraw from the illustration project. She felt the suffocating weight of public scrutiny. Could she separate her professional work from her personal confusion? Outside, the tide must have been rolling in, because a salty wind rattled the window. Michelle typed a draft email. "I'm sorry, I can't continue." But her chest squeezed. She needed the money, sure. But deeper than that, she loved illustrating, and she'd never found a chance as good as this. Why should I throw away my passion because of rumors? Yet the sense of betrayal lingered. She slammed the laptop shut, tears biting at the corners of her eyes. "I need to think," she whispered. Nora wriggled, letting out a needy whine. Michelle forced a shaky smile, pressing her forehead to her daughter's. "Right now, let's get you changed, okay?" With that, she stepped away, trying to ignore the phone that buzzed with notifications, curious texts, pings from coworkers at Natalie's cafe. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. She just wanted to vanish from the noise. Late afternoon found Michelle pacing her living room, mind churning, the echo of waves drifting through an open window. She'd tried to block the gossip website, but stumbled on social media chatter instead. Snarky comments about the poor single mom hooking Miles Harrington stung like barbed wire. She paused at a framed photo of Noah. He grinned from the picture, wearing that easy smile she'd fallen in love with. The pang of grief mingled with guilt, like she was betraying him by letting herself care about Miles. But was she punishing herself unnecessarily? Eventually, she made up her mind. She grabbed her phone and typed a final text to Miles. "I'm sorry, but I need distance. Please respect that." Then she turned off her phone entirely, sinking onto the couch as the last rays of sun cast golden stripes across the floor. She let Nora crawl on a blanket nearby, the baby babbling at some crayons. Despite the heartbreak, Michelle felt a tiny sliver of relief like the hush before a storm fully settles in. 2 days passed since Michelle's decision to cut contact. In that time, she plunged into her old routines, opening shifts at Natalie's cafe, evenings spent coaxing Nora to sleep, and late-night illustration attempts that left her drained. A hollow ache pulsed beneath every moment, though she kept up a brave face. One crisp morning, as she wiped down the cafe's glossy wooden counter, Natalie sidled over. "You look terrible," her friend said gently, arching an eyebrow. "Hardly slept?" Michelle forced a tight laugh. "Gee, thanks. You're so kind." Natalie held out a fresh croissant. "Try me. What's going on? You've been edgy all week, and rumor has it your phone's off. Usually, you're texting away with that mysterious benefactor." A flash of hurt flared. "He's not, yes, he helped me, but everything got complicated." She exhaled, sliding a coffee mug aside. "I just can't talk about it right now." Natalie studied her, sympathy in her gaze. "All right, but if you need a shoulder, you know where to find me." Michelle nodded stiffly, grateful but unable to articulate the swirl of betrayal, longing, and regret that haunted her. She plastered on a brittle smile for the customers, methodically refilling coffee pots and handing out pastries. Her heart pounded every time the door chimed, half hoping Miles might appear, half terrified he would. During a brief lull, she peeked at her old phone. She'd turned it on for a moment, facing a flood of missed calls, some from unknown numbers, others from Celia. No messages from Miles, though, which simultaneously relieved and stung her. With a sigh, she switched it off again. That evening, after she'd tucked Nora in, Michelle slumped at her small dining table. The hush of the house pressed in on her. Dim lamplight revealed half-finished sketches, bright ocean creatures dancing across a spread. She stared at them, feeling the passion flicker. Should I quit the project? The thought hammered relentlessly. She dreaded seeing more headlines tying her to Harrington Innovations. Yet the job paid decently, and she loved illustrating. Perhaps she could keep it purely professional, ignoring all personal ties with Miles. A knock sounded at her door, jolting her. She froze, heart lurching. It was late who would come by now. If it was Miles, cautiously, she opened the door to see Celia, hair neatly tied back, wearing a crisp blouse despite the muggy evening air. The woman's expression was subdued, worry etched in her eyes. "Hi," Celia said softly. "Sorry for dropping in unannounced. You weren't answering calls. Mind if I come in?" Michelle hesitated, then nodded. Sure." She stepped aside, letting Celia enter the modest living room. Celia glanced around politely. "Look, I know it's not my place, but I handle PR issues for Miles. The story's blowing up more than we expected. I wanted to check on you." Michelle pursed her lips, arms crossing protectively over her chest. "I'm dealing with it. Trying, anyway." Celia's gaze darted to the baby monitor on the coffee table. The faint hiss of Nora's soft breathing came through. "Miles is worried," she said gently. "He didn't want to pressure you. He's been burying himself in work, skipping meals, that sort of thing. Frankly, I'm concerned about both of you." Michelle swallowed a wave of guilt. She pictured Miles exhausted, haunted by the possibility he'd ruined everything by not being fully honest. But he's the one who left out so many details. Celia took a small step closer. "He never meant to mislead you. He spent years building Harrington Innovations quietly. He lost a lot of people's trust after his parents died, so he got used to hiding behind half-truths. But you were different, and he didn't know how to handle it." Something tightened behind Michelle's ribs, a combination of anger and compassion. "Why are you telling me this?" Celia's voice softened further. "Because I see how he looks at you, and I see how you brought a spark back into his life. He's messed up by not coming clean, but believe me, Miles is a good man." She paused, letting that sink in. "If you still want to cut ties, fine. But don't think for a second he just used you or pitied you. That's not him." Michelle sank onto the edge of the couch, eyes burning. Her chest felt too tight. I don't know what to believe. Everything's a mess. People call me a gold digger. His board might think I'm some scandal. And I have a baby to protect. I can't let Nora be in the middle of a media circus. Celia nodded gravely. Miles said the same. He'd do anything to keep Nora safe from the spotlight. She took a breath, her tone turning practical. Look, from a professional standpoint, you're still free to finalize the children's book project. We want your illustrations. That won't change. It's your call whether you separate that from your personal relationship or not. A swirl of relief and anxiety pulsed through Michelle. I need time, she whispered, voice trembling. This whole thing, my head spins. Celia offered a faint smile. Take the time you need. I'll let him know you're safe. Also, the rumor mill will die down eventually. We'll do some damage control on our end. But it helps to know how you'd prefer to be addressed if the press preys further. Michelle forced out a small exhale. I just want them off my back. Let them think what they want, as long as they don't harass me or Nora. Understood. Celia gave a nod, stepping toward the door. Just don't lose faith in him, okay? Or in yourself. Life's messy, but good people are worth fighting for. With that, she slipped out, leaving Michelle alone with the hum of the baby monitor. The hush descended, broken only by the distant crash of waves. Slowly, Michelle buried her face in her hands, tears leaking free. She wasn't sure if they were tears of anger, regret, or longing. Maybe all three. Over the next week, Michelle managed to get by on autopilot. She worked extra shifts at the cafe to cover mounting rent. Rain returned to Marin Shore in sporadic bursts, flooding some side roads, forcing her to navigate puddles with Nora's stroller whenever she left the house. Her mood careened between numbness and a gnawing ache. At times, she'd recall glimpses of Miles's sincerity, his gentle lullabies for Nora, the protective way he helped her during storms. But each memory clashed with that sharp sense of betrayal. He'd hidden a major piece of who he was. She still hadn't powered on her phone, worried about calls from reporters or acquaintances wanting juicy details. The worst part was how much she missed him. Late nights, when Nora finally settled, Michelle found her mind drifting back to the easy laughs they'd shared, the comfortable silences that spoke volumes. I should be stronger than this, she'd tell herself, but the loneliness pressed in like damp sea mist. One morning, after a particularly heavy rain, Michelle discovered water seeping under her front door again. Cursing under her breath, she wadded up towels to block the trickle, imagining how quickly Miles would have stepped in to fix it. The thought only twisted the knife deeper. No, I can't rely on him anymore. At midday, she trudged through ankle-deep water to get to the cafe. Natalie eyed her soaked shoes with pity. Lord, girl, you're drenched. Sit down. I'll make you a hot chocolate. Michelle tried to muster a smile. No, it's fine. I can't slack off. We open soon. Seriously, you look like you've been put through the ringer. Natalie's tone held firm concern. Michelle, talk to me. This last week, you've been so closed off. Michelle's shoulders slumped. She lowered her voice. I cut things off with Miles, or kind of... Natalie frowned. I guessed as much. Thought you two were heading somewhere good, though. So what happened? Drawing a shaky breath, Michelle explained the basics. The scandalous article, the shock of learning Miles was more than just a well-off guy, the tension over public gossip. Natalie listened intently, arms folded, expression thoughtful. Look, I get feeling betrayed, she said softly. He should have been upfront about his identity, but can you really blame him for wanting a normal connection? And do you think he actually tried to manipulate you? Michelle's throat clenched. He never demanded anything, but he omitted. I can't deal with secrets. Natalie gave a small nod. Fair, but sometimes good people make bad judgment calls. Doesn't mean they're a lost cause. Michelle rubbed her temples. It's more than that. The press keeps calling me a gold digger. I can't stand that. And I'm not sure if I can handle the stress, like, is this what my life would be like with him? Natalie gently placed a warm hand on Michelle's shoulder. Sometimes love is messy, especially with a powerful figure like him, but you have to weigh the good with the bad. If it's real, it's worth fighting for. If it's not, you walk away, but don't let fear or some random gossip rag decide for you. Michelle felt tears burning. She nodded stiffly, hugging herself. I needed space. I still do. That's okay, Natalie said, softening her tone. Take space, but keep your heart open to the possibility that he's not the villain here. He might just be a flawed man who cares deeply for you and Nora. Michelle couldn't speak for a moment, chest tight with emotion. Finally, she nodded, forcing a trembling exhale. Thanks, she whispered. I'll think about it. They returned to the cafe tasks, but the conversation clung to Michelle's thoughts like the lingering dampness in her clothes. She spent the day serving lattes with an automatic smile, her mind in turmoil. Maybe she was letting fear overshadow the genuine bond she'd felt with Miles. But how could she be certain? That night, after rocking Nora to sleep, Michelle found herself pacing, nerves throbbing. Impulsively, she flicked on her phone, ignoring the onslaught of notifications. She typed out a text to Miles, but stopped halfway. Are you okay? I'm sorry for... She froze, guilt and longing roaring in her veins. No, not yet. She deleted the draft. Instead, she typed, I have to finalize the children's book sketches. I'll email them to the Harrington team soon. It was detached, purely professional. She sent it, then set the phone aside with trembling hands. Moments later, the phone buzzed. A new message from Celia. Understood. The team is excited to see your final artwork. Hope you're doing all right. No mention of Miles. Relief and disappointment washed over Michelle. She pressed her palm against her eyes, tears threatening again. She missed him so fiercely it felt physical, like a tidal pull she couldn't resist, yet she feared giving in, only to drown in heartbreak or more public scrutiny. Her gaze drifted to the corner of the room where she kept a small basket of Noah's mementos photos from their wedding, a keychain he once used. She'd never even had a chance to show them to Miles, to share that crucial piece of her past. Now everything hung in limbo, overshadowed by bitterness and misunderstandings. Slowly, she sank onto the couch, drawing her knees to her chest. Outside, the ocean wind whispered against the shutters, as if reminding her that storms can come and go, but the sea remains. Maybe Natalie's right, she thought. I need time to decide, not bury myself in fear. Yet, as midnight crept in, she found no easy answers, only the steady lullaby of waves and the ache in her heart that refused to subside. A week later, the skies over Marin Shore turned ominous once more. Weather advisories warned of heavy rainfall and possible flooding. Michelle prepared as best she could, stocking up on Nora's special formula, praying the storm would pass quickly. She kept to herself, still uncertain about calling Miles. Late that evening, thunder growled in the distance, and sheets of rain pummeled the rooftop. Michelle was up sketching at her dining table, finishing touches on a whimsical underwater scene for the children's book. Nora slept peacefully in the adjacent room, or so Michelle thought. A sudden shrill cry tore through the air. Michelle jolted upright, heart hammering. Nora's cries sounded hoarse, choked, as if she couldn't breathe properly. Michelle dashed into the bedroom, flipping on the lamp. Nora's face was flushed, her little chest heaving. She coughed violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. Panic seized Michelle's throat. No, 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 sweetheart, she whispered, scooping the baby up. Nora's breathing came in ragged gasps, her tiny body hot. Fever. But she was fine earlier. Trying to stay calm, Michelle pressed her hand to Nora's forehead, burning. She grabbed the infant fever reducer but realized Nora's cough was too severe. This was beyond a simple cold. Another wave of coughing racked Nora's small frame, eyes squeezing shut in pain. Fear roared in Michelle's ears like the storm outside. She needed medical help, immediately. But her battered phone blinked with a near-dead battery, and the storm had probably flooded half the roads. She struggled to dial Dr. Lucas's clinic, receiving only a busy tone. Of course, she thought hysterically, everyone's calling because of the storm. Nora let out a strangled cry, face reddening, and Michelle felt her composure crack. Only one person came to mind who had the resources and connections to cut through these obstacles. Heart pounding, she scrolled to Miles's name. She'd insisted on distance, but right now, pride meant nothing. Please pick up on the third ring, a weary voice answered. Michelle? He sounded half awake, confusion quickly giving way to alarm when she sobbed. Nora's really sick, she can't breathe well. I need help. Instantly, Miles's tone sharpened. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Hang in there." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the frantic tears on Michelle's face. She tried to soothe Nora, whispering reassurances. Each cough felt like a knife in Michelle's gut. She'd never heard Nora so distressed, like her tiny lungs were giving out. The minutes crawled like hours. Rain assaulted the windows, thunder booming overhead. Michelle rocked Nora by the front door, adrenaline spiking. Her phone buzzed, a text from Miles. "Outside! Hurry!" She flung the door open. Miles stood in the downpour, drenched, the headlights of his SUV cutting through the watery darkness. He rushed forward, taking Nora from Michelle's trembling arm so she could scramble into the passenger seat. The baby gasped, face slick with tears, coughing fitfully. Miles jumped behind the wheel, peeling away from the curb. Water splashed up over the tires, the wipers struggling to clear the torrential downpour. "I called the hospital," he said, voice tight with urgency. "They'll have a pediatric team waiting. Hold on. We'll get her there." Michelle pressed her lips to Nora's burning forehead, tears mixing with the storm's gloom. She had no breath for words, only raw panic surging inside. Miles navigated flooded streets with white-knuckled focus. Twice they swerved around fallen branches, the SUV nearly skidding on slick pavement. Finally, bright lights of the county hospital emerged, a stark beacon in the storm. Nurses and a doctor in raincoats waited at the ER entrance. The moment they pulled up, Miles and Michelle scrambled out, medical staff carefully transferring Nora onto a pediatric stretcher. Her coughing hadn't eased, and Michelle's heart pounded so violently she could hardly breathe. They rushed through sliding glass doors, neon lights flickering overhead. The smell of antiseptic filled Michelle's nostrils as she stumbled after them, soaked sneakers squeaking on linoleum. A young doctor, Lucas, caught her arm. "She's got respiratory distress. We'll do a chest x-ray, put her on oxygen. Don't worry, we'll do everything we can." "Thank you," Michelle choked out, tears streaming. Miles hovered, silent but supportive, his shirt plastered to his body, hair dripping. Staff led them to a small waiting area separated by glass walls from the pediatric triage. Through it, Michelle saw Nora's tiny form under bright lights as nurses administered medication. Each beep of the monitor sliced Michelle's nerves. She stood shaking, adrenaline fizzing through her limbs. Miles gently put a hand on her shoulder. She turned, tears burning. I can't lose her," she rasped. His voice broke. "You won't. She'll be okay. Lucas is the best." He rubbed her shoulder, eyes bright with worry. "I'm here, Michelle. Whatever you need." Despite everything, relief flooded her. She clutched Miles's hand, sobbing softly. After all the distance, the anger, here he was, her anchor in the storm. "I'm sorry," she wanted to say, but her throat locked. They waited, hearts pounding in unison. Eventually, Dr. Lucas emerged, pulling off latex gloves. "She's stable. We're admitting her overnight. She likely has an infection, pneumonia, or bronchiolitis. We'll keep her on oxygen and IV antibiotics. You got here just in time." Michelle buckled under the weight of relief, tears of gratitude blurring her vision. Miles's arm circled her waist, steadying her as her knees wobbled. "Can I see her?" Michelle whispered. "Of course, Doctor," Lucas said softly. "Just let them finish setting up. She'll be in pediatric room 204. Miles' warm hand remained on Michelle's back as they followed a nurse to the hallway. The storm raged outside, but inside these walls, the hum of fluorescent lights and hospital machinery provided a strange solace. For the first time in days, Michelle let herself lean against Miles, inhaling the faint scent of rain on his skin, allowing the tears to flow freely. No words were needed right then. They stood in tense unity, overshadowed by the terror of Nora's health scare, yet connected by an undeniable bond. Whatever the gossip said, whatever secrets Miles had hidden, none of it mattered in that raw moment. He had rushed to her side without hesitation, and that simple fact spoke volumes. A pre-dawn hush settled over the pediatric wing of Marin Shores Community Hospital. The fluorescent lights hummed softly, casting pale reflections on the polished floor. In room 204, Michelle sat slumped in a vinyl chair beside Nora's cot, exhaustion etched into her features. The night had stretched on like a never-ending highway. Every beep from the monitor stabbed her nerves. Every tiny whimper from Nora rekindled raw fear. Nora, hooked up to an IV drip, looked so small under the pastel hospital blankets. Her fever had dropped, but her breathing still rasped with congestion. Occasionally, she stirred, eyelids fluttering before slipping back into a medicated doze. Miles Harrington stood by the window, arms folded across his chest. The glow of approaching morning lit his silhouette, revealing the rumpled state of his clothes. He'd refused to leave, despite Michelle's attempts to ease him away. His reflection in the glass looked as haunted as Michelle felt. She glanced over her shoulder at him. "You don't have to stay," she said quietly, voice raw. "I know it's been a long night." He shook his head, gaze never leaving Nora. "Don't ask me to go," he murmured. "Not until we're sure she's okay." Michelle swallowed the lump in her throat, too drained to argue. It was in moments like this that his real self showed protective, unwavering caring beyond reason. And no matter how conflicted she felt about his half-truths, she couldn't deny her gratitude. The door slid open. Dr. Lucas, the pediatrician who'd been on call, stepped inside. Short and genial, he carried a tablet with Nora's chart. "Morning," he greeted in a low tone. "I've got the latest labs. She's responding well to the antibiotics, and her oxygen saturation is improving." Michelle sagged with relief, tears brimming. "So she'll be all right?" Lucas offered a gentle smile. "Yes, but she'll need a couple of days to fully recover. We'll keep monitoring her lungs. She's had quite a scare." He paused, then checked the IV line. "We can move her to a more comfortable recovery room soon." Miles exhaled sharply, tension draining from his posture. Thank God. When Dr. Lucas left, the hush returned, broken only by the soft hiss of air through Nora's nasal cannula. Michelle reached out, brushing her fingertips over Nora's tiny hand. The baby stirred, briefly opening her drowsy eyes. In that brief moment, she squeezed Michelle's finger, then let go, drifting back into restless sleep. Michelle leaned back, closing her own eyes. A swirl of emotions churned within her: gratitude, relief, lingering resentment, and a tender warmth whenever her gaze flicked to Miles. After a beat of silence, she cleared her throat. "Thank you for everything." Again. Miles turned, slipping into the chair beside her. The closeness made her aware of the faint scent of soap and old rain on his clothes. "Don't thank me," he said, voice low. "I'd do it 1,000 times." She studied him warily. "I was so angry with you for hiding who you really are. But last night, none of that mattered when Nora got sick." His expression tightened, regret pooling in his eyes. "I understand why you felt betrayed. I should have told you sooner, but—" He raked a hand through his messy hair. "I wanted to be normal in your eyes. I'm not used to people caring about me, not my bank account." Michelle swallowed, the ache in her chest flaring. "You didn't want me to judge you as some billionaire boss. I get that now. But I hated feeling blindsided." She paused, glancing at Nora's monitors. "And then the gossip articles, I hated people assuming the worst of me, that I'm just a gold digger or something." Miles's jaw clenched. "You're not. And I'll do anything to set that straight." He leaned forward, voice trembling with earnestness. "I never saw you as a charity case. You're strong, Michelle. Stronger than you realize. That's what drew me to you." Tears pricked her eyes again, a mixture of relief and something that felt dangerously like hope. She wiped them away with the back of her hand. "I was scared," she admitted softly. "First, losing Noah. Then letting someone else in, I was scared it'd all fall apart again." He reached out, tentative, gently covering her hand with his. The contact sent a wave of warmth through her tired limbs. "I'm scared too," he confessed. "Every day I think about how quickly life can shatter. But you and Nora, you give me something I haven't felt in years." Michelle let his words settle in the quiet room, each beep of Nora's monitor counting the seconds. At length, she squeezed his hand. "I don't know what happens next," she whispered, "but I'm not running anymore. If you're willing to be honest with me from now on." Miles's throat bobbed as he nodded. "No more secrets. I promise." For a moment, the tension that had weighed on them for weeks lifted, replaced by a fragile peace. The morning sun broke through the window, illuminating Nora's cot with a gentle halo. Michelle and Miles watched their tiny miracle breathing softly, together in that shared silence, a family in all but name. A nurse tapped on the door, apologizing for the interruption. "We're ready to move her to a recovery suite. One parent can ride with her, the other can follow." Michelle looked at Miles, who simply nodded and stepped aside. "Go ahead," he murmured, letting her accompany Nora. He followed close behind, carrying their scattered belongings. As they navigated the hallway, Michelle felt a swell of calm. She couldn't quite call it joy, not while Nora remained hooked to IV lines, but it was a sense of unity with Miles that she'd missed. The sense that they were facing this crisis side by side, no matter the storm. 2 days later, the hospital staff discharged Nora. Though a little pale and coughing occasionally, she was healthy enough to go home. Michelle stood by a large window in the pediatric wing, the coastal sun shining on her face. She glanced down at Nora, snug in a pink onesie, squealing at a stuffed seahorse gift from the nurses. Miles appeared with the discharge papers. "I handled the billing," he said quietly, as if expecting an argument. "All set." Michelle stiffened, pride and gratitude warring inside her. "Miles, I can't let you pay for all that. It's huge." He shrugged, though his eyes flickered with concern. "You can pay me back however you like, spread out over time, or not at all. I won't push you, but I won't let you drown in debt either." She exhaled, biting her lip. Part of her wanted to protest again, but a larger part recognized she'd never handle these costs alone, and the gentleness in his tone disarmed her. She managed a small nod, letting relief seep in. "Thank you." They wheeled Nora out in a borrowed stroller, heading toward the hospital's automatic doors. Fresh coastal air greeted them, carrying the scent of salt and possibilities. Michelle shielded Nora's eyes from the sun. The baby cooed, evidently thrilled to be outdoors again. Miles escorted them to his SUV, helping secure Nora's car seat. "I figured I'd drive you home," he said, voice neutral. "Unless you'd rather someone else?" She shook her head. "No, I'd like that." Her lips twitched in a shadow of a smile. "I trust you're driving, at least." A hint of relief crossed his face. They slipped into the car, pulling away from the hospital's glass facade. The day felt bright and open, the sky a radiant blue with only a few stray clouds near the horizon, such a stark contrast to the frantic storm and midnight rush that had brought them there. As they drove through Marin Shore's narrow streets, Michelle observed signs of post-flood cleanup. Volunteers stacking sandbags, city workers fixing damaged power lines. Windows glinted under the sun, reflecting the resilience of a town accustomed to nature's fury. Nora dozed quietly, lulled by the car's gentle motion. Michelle let her gaze drift over to Miles's profile. A question burned in her mind, one she'd been hesitant to voice. "Miles," she began softly, "about us, where do we stand now?" He tightened his grip on the wheel, glancing her way at a red light. "We can move at your pace. No pressure. I want to be in Nora's life. And yours." He swallowed hard, vulnerability in his eyes. "I don't want to lose you again." Michelle's heart pounded. She recalled the heartbreak, the tabloids, the nights she'd spent raging at the deception, but also the quiet devotion she'd seen in him all along. "I'm not ready to define everything yet," she admitted. "But I don't want to push you away either. Maybe we take it slow, see where it leads." A soft smile touched his lips. "Slow is fine, as long as we're being honest." She nodded, comforted by the new clarity. The light turned green, and Miles guided the SUV onto the coastal road. Waves crashed gently against the rocky shore. Sunlight glimmered on the water like molten gold. When they reached Michelle's house, she noticed with a pang that the yard still bore muddy ruts from the recent storms. Miles parked, coming around to help with Nora's seat. As they approached the front door, he hesitated. "Mind if I come in for a moment?" She studied his expression, uncertain, hopeful. "All right." Inside, the living room smelled faintly of damp wood, though Michelle had done her best to air it out. Sunbeams cut across the space in dusty ribbons. She laid Nora on a soft blanket spread on the floor. The baby yawned, content to kick at the air. Miles rubbed the back of his neck. I was thinking maybe I could send a contractor to fix that door gap so water doesn't keep seeping in. Strictly practical, no strings attached. Michelle let out a resigned laugh. You and your helpful solutions. All right, fine. But only if you let me at least attempt to pay for some of it. He held her gaze, a flicker of warmth in his eyes. Deal. A shy silence fell. In the background, Nora gurgled, seeming to sense the ease between them. Michelle knelt to stroke her daughter's hair. She could feel Miles's presence behind her, and somehow it felt natural. At length, Miles cleared his throat. Listen, about your children's book project, I heard from Celia that your final illustrations were amazing. The marketing team is thrilled. Michelle turned, surprise lighting her features. Really? He nodded earnestly. They want more, possibly a bigger series if you're up for it. A grin tugged at his lips. You deserve all the credit here. Your talent's shining. Her eyes misted, a surge of confidence tempered by humility. I almost quit, she confessed. When everything blew up in the media, I thought about walking away. Miles's face grew solemn. I'm glad you didn't. You shouldn't lose something you love because of my mess. She rose, facing him fully. Maybe it was never just your mess. I had my own fears and grudges, but now I want to keep illustrating, and I'll handle any backlash that comes my way. His eyes gleamed with admiration. You're braver than you think. Michelle's cheeks heated, but she didn't look away. A hush stretched between them, thick with unspoken possibility. Outside, a lazy breeze rustled the palms and a distant gull cried. She found herself stepping closer, drawn by the steady warmth in his gaze. For a moment it seemed like they might bridge the gap entirely, but Nora let out a giggle, startling them both. They laughed, tension dissolving. Miles ran a hand through his hair. I should let you settle in. You both need rest. Michelle nodded. Yeah. Come by soon, though? His smile was quiet but genuine. Count on it. With a gentle wave toward Nora, he stepped out. Michelle followed him to the door, heart fluttering in her chest. As he left, she realized that the emptiness she'd felt was replaced by a cautious hope. The day outside was bright, the storms momentarily at bay. And inside her living room, Nora's laugh echoed, a testament that healing was possible. A week later, Michelle found her daily routine almost peaceful. Nora's cough had faded to an occasional sniffle, and the mother-daughter duo spent mornings strolling around Marin Shore. She continued her part-time shifts at Natalie's cafe, greeting neighbors with an ease that felt strange after all the tabloid drama. She hadn't seen Miles face-to-face in days, though they texted regularly, sharing quick updates about Nora's health or random photos of scenic spots in town. It was a delicate dance, maintaining a comfortable closeness without rushing into deep conversations about the future. One afternoon, the cafe stayed quiet. Michelle wiped down tables while Natalie tallied receipts. The door chimed, and to Michelle's surprise, Celia stepped inside. The assistant offered a friendly smile, strolling up to the counter. Hey, Michelle, got a moment? Michelle's heart skipped. Sure. Everything okay? Celia nodded, placing a thick envelope on the countertop. Miles asked me to deliver this personally. She slid it across. It's an invitation to Harrington Innovations' annual coastal fundraiser, our big charity event supporting children's respiratory health. The envelope was embossed with elegant sea-themed designs. Michelle traced her fingertips over the swirling patterns, mind racing. She remembered the fiasco with reporters, the fear of being labeled the gold digger. But she also recalled the conversation with Miles, wanting to move forward. She looked up, nerves trembling. I'm not sure if I should go. That world, his crowd, I don't exactly fit in. Celia's expression softened. That's precisely why he wants you there. Your illustrations are a major part of our new children's campaign. And trust me, people are impressed. He wants to honor your work, let you see the impact of your art on these kids. Michelle's heart fluttered. A swirl of excitement and apprehension blurred her thoughts. She remembered how uncertain she'd been about stepping into Miles's world of wealth and status. But the idea of seeing her creations displayed for a charitable cause lit a spark. After a pause, she mustered a small smile. Okay, I'll think about it. Celia left, satisfied. Once she was gone, Natalie sidled over, wiping her hands on an apron. Girl, that's a golden ticket right there. Why the hesitation? Michelle fiddled with the envelope. Because it means stepping back into the spotlight. And last time that happened, I got labeled as a gold digger. My life turned upside down. Natalie tapped the countertop. So let them talk. You can't hide forever. And if Miles is serious about supporting you and you him, maybe this is your chance to show you're more than the rumors. Michelle gazed at the envelope, recalling how passionately she loved illustrating for children, how proud she was of the artwork that might now help raise funds for kids with illnesses like Nora's. She took a steadying breath. You're right, she murmured. I need to do this, for me and for Nora, and for him. That evening, once Nora was asleep, Michelle found a quiet moment to text Miles. Got the invitation. I'll be there, but I'm nervous. He replied almost instantly. You'll be amazing. I'll handle any negativity. This event's about the kids and your art. Thank you for saying yes. Despite her anxieties, a flicker of warmth ignited in her chest. She typed back, I'm trusting you. His final message was simple. You won't regret it. Michelle set the phone aside, heart pounding. Could she truly walk into that high-profile event, ignoring the whispers? She glanced at the old photo of Noah on a shelf. A soft ache reminded her of the man she lost, but she also felt a quiet permission to embrace new possibilities. Her life was changing, like coastal tides, at times rough, at times calm, always in motion. The night of the coastal fundraiser arrived in a flourish of sea-green banners and candle-lit pathways. The venue was the newly refurbished Marin Shore Resort, the same place that had once sheltered Michelle during the storm. Now, it was transformed into an elegant event space with twinkling fairy lights draped around palm trees, a breezy open-air patio overlooking the ocean. Michelle stood near the entrance, heart thudding in her chest. She wore a simple but flattering midnight blue dress borrowed from Natalie. Her hair was pinned up, a few loose strands framing her face. She clutched a small clutch bag, wishing she'd had more practice walking in heels. Celia greeted her with a grin. You look stunning, she whispered, leading Michelle inside. Tables displayed her illustrated boards for the children's campaign Happy Sea Creatures, guiding kids to breathe easier. A wave of pride and vulnerability flooded Michelle's senses. People in elegant attire floated around, sipping drinks, discussing philanthropic goals. And then, across the softly lit courtyard, she spotted Miles. He wore a tailored gray suit, looking every bit the polished CEO. When their eyes met, a jolt of recognition passed between them, intimate despite the crowded setting. He excused himself from a conversation with a board member and strode over. You made it, he murmured, taking in her appearance with unabashed admiration. Nerves roiled in Michelle's stomach. Yeah, it's overwhelming, she admitted, glancing around at the glamorous crowd. He offered a reassuring smile, leaning closer so only she could hear. Don't let them intimidate you. Half the folks here just want to rub shoulders with money. The rest actually care about the cause. Either way, you deserve to be here. She exhaled slowly, comforted by his presence. Before she could respond, a middle-aged woman in a sleek silver gown approached, praising Michelle's illustrations. Michelle forced a polite smile, fumbling through small talk about the project's inspiration and the importance of children's health. She sensed Miles's discreet support at her side, stepping in if a question became too intrusive. As the night progressed, a few curious glances and half-smiles came Michelle's way, but no overt hostility. If rumors simmered, they didn't bubble over. The event's mood was celebratory live music drifted from a raised platform, while waves crashed softly in the background. Michelle found herself loosening, even laughing when a group of kids recognized her cartoon fish from the display boards and asked for autographs. Miles returned after a brief stage appearance thanking donors and highlighting the new children's respiratory program. With a hand at the small of Michelle's back, he guided her to a quieter corner near the patio edge. Moonlight silvered the ocean's surface, and the breeze carried a briny hush. You were amazing out there, she said, heart tugging at the earnest pride in her voice. He brushed off the compliment, cheeks flushing slightly. Your artwork's the real star. The kids loved it. and we raised a significant amount in donations tonight." A comfortable silence settled, the distant chatter of guests fading like background music. They stepped onto the sand, away from the glare of the floodlights. Moonlight illuminated their faces, the gentle roar of the tide enveloping them. Michelle's breath caught at the soft intensity in Miles's gaze. "Thank you for letting me do this," she murmured, "for believing in me even when I wasn't sure I believed in myself." He shook his head. "You did it on your own. I just gave you the chance." Then his voice dropped to a hush. "Michelle, there's something I need to say." Her pulse skittered. The ocean breeze teased strands of her hair, tangling them around her cheeks. "Go ahead." He inhaled, eyes shining under the moon. "I know you've been torn between your past with Noah and this new connection we have. I never wanted to replace him. I only want to respect the love you shared and still find room for us." Tears stung Michelle's eyes. She blinked rapidly. "Miles?" She paused, a raw ache in her throat. "I love Noah. Part of me always will. But I'm done letting fear stop me from moving forward. Meeting you taught me that love can happen again, even after devastating loss. I'm just still learning how to let go of the guilt." He touched her cheek gently, warmth radiating through her. "You don't have to let go. You can carry him with you. I just want a chance to walk beside you." She let out a trembling breath. The waves caressed the shore, a comforting rhythm beneath the swirl of emotions inside her. Slowly, she leaned closer, the pull between them undeniable. Miles's hand cupped her face, and in the hush of that moonlit beach, they finally gave in. Their lips met in a tender, hesitant kiss, like the first gentle brush of waves on untouched sand. It deepened, carrying months of longing, heartbreak, and cautious hope. Michelle's heart soared, tears slipping free equal parts grief and release. When they broke apart, breath mingling in the salt-tinged air, she whispered, "I'm still scared, but I want this." Miles pressed his forehead against hers. "So do I. And I promise, no more hiding. We face it all together." She nodded, chest fluttering. In that moment, with the moon reflecting on the dark water, it felt like something fragile and beautiful had been reborn. A quiet acceptance of the past and a brave step into a shared future. Behind them, distant laughter and music carried on the breeze, reminding them the world was still watching. But here, in the intimate glow of night, they had found a piece of solace and embrace worth the storms they had weathered. The early morning sun filtered through the sheer curtains of Michelle's living room, illuminating the scattered art supplies and brightly colored sketches for children's books. The house felt tranquil. Nora played on a soft quilt, babbling at plastic sea animals, while Michelle carefully adjusted shading on a new illustration. Outside, gulls called across the salt-drenched air, and a light breeze carried the faint tang of ocean tide. A quiet knock sounded at the door. Michelle set her pencil aside and opened it to find Miles, looking both eager and slightly anxious. He clutched a thin stack of paperwork under one arm. "Morning," he greeted softly, stepping inside with a warm but tentative smile. "Hi," Michelle replied, her heart fluttering. Since their moonlit confession a few nights ago, an unspoken gentleness had settled between them like the hush after a fierce storm. She was still getting used to this new closeness, the way he'd casually lean in for a brief kiss or brush his hand across her shoulder with unmistakable affection. Nora let out an excited gurgle at the sight of Miles, her tiny arms stretching in demand. He obliged with a grin, scooping her up into his arms. "Hey, princess," he murmured, pressing his cheek against her fuzzy hair. Nora squealed, and Michelle felt an ache of warmth in her chest. When Miles set Nora back on the blanket, he cleared his throat, gaze flicking to Michelle. I had a thought. My big place near Harrington Innovations HQ, it's mostly empty. I keep a skeleton staff there, but it's designed for a full family. I'd like you and Nora to consider moving in, or at least visit. No rush." Michelle stiffened, reflexively folding her arms. She glanced at the stack of papers he held. "You mean live there?" Miles nodded, his expression earnest. "Yes, eventually if you want to. Not tomorrow or anything. I know it's huge. I don't want you feeling like you're losing your independence. But that house has more than enough space, better security, child-proofing potential. And it's closer to my office, so I could spend time with Nora easier. She hesitated, heart thumping. Miles, that's a big step. I still have memories of Noah here. This was our home. She exhaled softly. I'm worried it'd feel like I'm erasing him. Miles set the paperwork aside on a side table, stepping closer, voice gentle. I'd never ask you to forget him. I get that he's part of your life forever. This wouldn't erase anything. It's just building a new chapter if you're ready. Something inside her twisted grief intertwined with the blossoming love she felt for Miles. Her gaze darted to Nora, who was busy gnawing on a rubber whale. I don't know, she whispered. I'm scared of losing what's left of my past. Scared that if I move forward, I'll be betraying Noah's memory. Miles's hand settled lightly on her arm, a comforting weight. Then let me help you honor him. We can figure it out. But if it's too soon, say the word. I'll understand. Michelle swallowed, tears prickling at the back of her eyes. Thank you, she managed, stepping into his arms for a brief embrace. His warmth soothed her. Outside, the faint call of a gull broke the stillness, reminding her that storms come and go, yet life keeps shifting like the tides. She pulled back, swiping away a stray tear. I'll think about it, she promised. Give me some time. Miles nodded, respect in his gaze. There's no deadline. He nudged the papers on the table. While I'm here, I dug up some info about... He hesitated, voice dropping. About Noah's memorial site. I wanted to see if we could help maintain it or do something meaningful together. A surge of vulnerability tightened Michelle's chest. You researched that? He nodded. I know how important he was. I wanted to see if there was a place you visited or something. I found out there's a small garden up on that cliffside where a sapling was planted in his honor. Is that right? She blinked, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness. Yes, it's a little grove overlooking the ocean. His family did it after the funeral. I haven't visited in a long time. Miles touched her hand. We can go together if you're willing. Pay our respects. I just want you to know I'm not trying to replace him. Tears welled in Michelle's eyes, and she gave a trembling nod. You're incredible, you know that. He blushed faintly. Just trying to do right by you and Nora. Then, glancing at the baby, he flashed a wry smile. And by her first daddy, too. Michelle leaned her head briefly against his shoulder. She'd never imagined such compassion from another man who wasn't Noah. The realization that it felt right, not forced, melted a piece of her long-held guilt. She was ready perhaps not for everything, but for this step, confronting her past with Miles by her side. The next afternoon found Michelle and Miles driving up a winding coastal road toward a high bluff that overlooked the endless blue ocean. Nora dozed in her rear car seat, lulled by the gentle rise and fall of the road. As they neared the crest, wind-blown grasses gave way to a small gravel parking spot. Michelle's pulse pounded. She hadn't been here since Noah's funeral. Memories danced at the edge of her vision, tears, condolences, the raw shock of losing him. Miles cut the engine, turning to her gently. Take your time. She nodded, forcing her trembling fingers to unbuckle the seatbelt. The sky was bright, scattered clouds drifting overhead. Far below, white-capped waves crashed against rugged cliffs. A weathered wooden sign pointed to the memorial grove. They walked side by side, Michelle carrying Nora while Miles trailed slightly behind. The path led to a secluded area where a handful of young trees stood, each marked by a small plaque. Sunlight filtered through their leaves, dancing patterns across the ground. The air smelled of salt and wildflowers. Michelle's heart clenched as she approached the plaque bearing Noah's name. It read simply, Noah Doyle, loved and remembered, may he rest amid these waves. Her eyes blurred with tears, and she rocked Nora absently, the baby stirring in her arms. Miles stood at a respectful distance but close enough to offer silent support. Michelle whispered, voice catching, Hi, Noah, it's been a while. She felt silly speaking aloud, but an odd calm spread through her. She told him about Nora's first smiles, her cough that had scared them all, the arrival of Miles, a man who'd saved them both more than once. Tears fell, but they felt cleansing. like a gentle summer rain rather than a raging storm. At one point, she sensed Miles stepping forward, his hand lightly grazing her back. "It's okay," he murmured. "He'd want to see you happy, Michelle." She swallowed the lump in her throat, nodding. "I think so, too." Hugging Nora close, she glanced at Miles. "If you want to say anything?" He looked taken aback, then cleared his throat. "Noah, I never knew you, but you gave the world this amazing little girl. And this woman He hesitated, emotion taut in his voice. "This woman who's changed my life. I promise I'll honor your memory, never try to replace you, just protect them and love them in my own way." Michelle's vision blurred at the raw honesty. She set Nora down momentarily, letting the baby crawl on a patch of soft grass. Then she turned, wrapping her arms around Miles. He held her, and they stood there in the hush of that sacred space, a breeze rustling the leaves above them. The distant roar of waves blended with the rhythmic beat of her heart. After a few minutes, they retrieved Nora and wandered around the grove, reading other plaques, quiet, but connected. Eventually, they made their way back to the car. Michelle glanced over her shoulder one last time at Noah's tree, a young sapling swaying in the coastal wind. Strange how heartbreak could coexist with gentle hope. As they drove away, she slipped her hand over Miles's on the gear shift. He cast her a grateful smile. "Thank you," she murmured, "for letting me share that with you." He lifted their joined hands, pressing a light kiss to her knuckles. "No, Michelle. Thank you for trusting me." A tranquil silence followed, and for once, Michelle felt truly at peace with her past. She'd always carry Noah's memory, but now she was ready to embrace the future too. Several weeks later, the rainy season gave way to bright, breezy days. Marin Shore shimmered under the sunshine, palm fronds rattling merrily in the coastal gusts. Michelle strolled through the busy fish market one morning, Nora perched on her hip, while Miles walked beside them carrying a cloth bag of fresh produce. Locals nodded politely, some flashing curious smiles by now. It was no secret that Miles and Michelle were a couple, though neither flaunted it. When they finished shopping, Miles drove them to a secluded cove where narrow lanes wound between pastel-colored beach houses. He pulled up to a modest but charming property, a one-story bungalow with a wraparound porch, a small yard enclosed by a white fence, and a towering palm tree swaying overhead. Michelle's eyes widened as she stepped out, sunlight spilling across the sand-swept yard. "What is this place?" Miles shifted, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "I know I asked you to consider moving into my big house, but you said you felt uneasy leaving Noah's memories behind. I thought maybe this could be a compromise. Still near town, near my office, but smaller, cozier, more us." She approached the porch, heart hammering. A riot of emotions tumbled inside her: gratitude, excitement, lingering guilt. "Miles, did you buy it?" He nodded, half smiling. "For us, but only if you like it. We can fix it up together. You can bring all your art stuff, make a studio. And Nora has space to crawl around, a yard to play in once she's bigger." A wave of warmth swelled in her chest. She gazed at the porch steps, imagining a rocking chair where she could sketch while Nora toddled in the grass. Memories of Noah felt present but not overshadowing. She recalled the permission she'd granted herself. It was okay to move forward. Tears pricked her eyes as she turned to Miles. "It's beautiful. Yes, I love it." He released a breath, relief shining in his gaze. "We can take it slow. You can move your stuff whenever you're ready. Or not. There's no pressure." Michelle blinked away tears. "I want to try," she whispered. "Nora needs a real home with two parents who love her. And I want that too." Miles's grin brimmed with joy. "Then welcome home, both of you." They ventured inside, stepping over dusty floorboards and sunlight streaming through wide windows. Though unfurnished, it had charming details: a stone fireplace, a roomy kitchen perfect for storing baby supplies, and enough nooks for Michelle's art projects. While Nora babbled, intrigued by the echo of her voice on bare walls, Michelle pictured splashes of color on these surfaces, her ocean-themed illustrations hung in frames. The place radiated potential. She turned to Miles, heart full. "Thank you," she said softly. "This means more than I can say." He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. You deserve a space to create and to heal. Nora deserves a yard where she can chase seagulls. And I— He paused, cheeks coloring. I deserve the chance to be a real father figure to her, if you'll let me. She smiled through a sheen of tears. Yes, yes, we will. In the weeks that followed, they moved Michelle's belongings gradually, piece by piece. She set up an art corner, pinned child-friendly designs along the walls. At night, Miles read bedtime stories to Nora while Michelle tidied up or sketched new ideas for Harrington Innovations' children's campaigns. The house filled with gentle laughter and quiet companionship. One evening, Michelle stood at the newly installed fence, admiring the horizon. A leftover hush from the day's work lingered, Miles's voice drifting from inside as he bathed Nora. She gazed at the pink-streaked sky, thinking about how far she'd come from that desperate night, texting a stranger for formula money, to building a family with him. Behind her, the screen door squeaked. Miles emerged, wiping his hands on a towel. Nora's out like a light, he said softly, stepping behind Michelle and wrapping his arms around her waist. She leaned back into his chest, breathing in his comforting scent. I'm so happy, she murmured, scanning the placid waters beyond the dunes. Never thought I'd feel like this again. He pressed a kiss to her temple. You gave me a reason to be better, more honest, more open. I can't thank you enough. They stood in the soft twilight, silhouettes framed by the golden sky. The hush carried the promise of what they shared, a delicate merging of past sorrows and present hope. A few months later, life settled into a gentle rhythm. Michelle's freelance illustration career thrived. Her vibrant undersea creatures and playful storyboards for children's health campaigns brought her acclaim far beyond Marin Shore. She balanced motherhood, art, and a growing partnership with Miles. He, in turn, scaled back his relentless work schedule, spending more afternoons at their cozy bungalow, reading to Nora or tinkering with yard improvements. That autumn afternoon, the sky glowed with warm oranges and purples as the sun dipped toward the horizon. Michelle, Miles, and a toddling Nora strolled along the beach a short distance from their house. Seabirds wheeled overhead, and waves washed against the shore in a soothing lullaby. Nora waddled on tiny legs, squealing whenever the tide brushed her feet. Miles chuckled, holding her steady, while Michelle trailed behind, heart full at the sight. She recalled how precarious life once felt, how she'd nearly lost hope, and now her days brimmed with laughter, creative fulfillment, and the promise of a family. Suddenly, Miles paused near a stretch of firm, damp sand. He set Nora down gently, letting the baby explore a cluster of seashells, then turned to Michelle, eyes shining with nervous anticipation. Hey, he began softly, voice trembling. There's something I've been waiting to do. Michelle's chest tightened, a flutter of excitement stirring. The dying sun cast long shadows across the shore, and the breeze carried the faint taste of salt. She watched, breath held, as Miles pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. I asked Celia to track down a special jeweler, he explained, opening the box to reveal a ring with 3 stones nestled in warm rose gold, one larger diamond at center, flanked by 2 smaller ones. The metal glimmered with a soft pinkish hue. I used part of my mother's earrings and a piece of your old wedding band. I wanted it to symbolize all of us, your past with Noah, my family's legacy, and the new life we're building together. Tears sprang to Michelle's eyes instantly. The significance of that simple detail incorporating her wedding band left her speechless. The 3 stones represented Nora, Michelle, and Miles, bound in a circle of love that honored the past without erasing it. Miles dropped to one knee in the damp sand, waves licking around his ankles. Nora stared wide-eyed, holding a shell in her tiny hand. Michelle Doyle, Miles said, voice shaking with emotion. Will you marry me? Will you let me love you, raise Nora by your side, and keep Noah's memory alive in our home? Michelle couldn't speak for a moment, overcome by gratitude and the gentle ache of remembering Noah. She saw the sincerity in Miles's eyes, the willingness to share her past rather than compete with it. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she managed a trembling nod. Yes, she whispered, then stronger. Yes, of course. He slid the ring onto her finger, the metal cool against her skin. The diamond sparkled in the sunset's glow. Michelle laughed through her tears, bending to wrap her arms around Miles. Nora babbled in delight, toddling toward them. Together, they scooped the baby up, the three of them forming a tight embrace in the golden twilight. When they finally parted, breathless, Michelle gazed at the ring, chest swelling with emotion. "It's perfect," she murmured. "You captured everything I was afraid to lose." Miles brushed a thumb over her cheek, wiping a stray tear. "Our family will always include Noah and my parents. We'll keep them with us, even as we move forward." Michelle nodded, heart thudding with irrepressible joy. She pressed a tender kiss to his lips, the sunset painting their silhouettes in radiant orange. In the distance, a few curious onlookers watched from afar, sensing they'd witnessed something special. They lingered on the shore, the three of them, until the sun slipped below the horizon and the sky turned a soft lavender. Little Nora stomped happily in the sand, giggling as the tide tickled her feet. Miles caught Michelle's eye, the silent promise of a lifetime in his gaze. A week later, beneath a small canopy in their yard, they held a private ceremony. Only a handful of close friends, Natalie, Celia, Dr. Lucas, and a couple of neighbors gathered amid wildflowers and ribbons. At a small table, 2 candles burned, one for Noah, one for Miles's mother and father, acknowledging the loves that had shaped them both. Miles vowed to love Nora as his own, telling her stories of the father she never met, while ensuring she never lacked warmth or guidance. Michelle, tears shining, promised to accept a new beginning without letting the past fade away. It was intimate and simple, a reflection of the quiet resilience they'd built. When they exchanged rings, Nora clapped, squealing, "Ma! Pa!" in her wobbly baby talk, prompting laughter from the guests. Michelle and Miles sealed their vows with a gentle kiss, the afternoon sun showering them in light. Music played softly, and the scent of sea breeze mingled with fresh flowers. Later, as the sky darkened to a rich blue, Michelle spotted the photograph of Noah on a small memorial table. She felt no guilt, only gratitude that he'd been part of her journey. She sensed his blessing in the hush of the wind. Standing with Miles and Nora by the fence, they watched the moon rise over the calm ocean, hand in hand. Michelle squeezed Miles's fingers, ring glinting under the moonlight. Her heart brimmed with a love that honored yesterday yet embraced tomorrow. In Marin Shore, a town where storms and renewal walked side by side, they found each other through a wrong number and an act of mercy. Through heartbreak and healing, they forged a family unafraid of the past, certain of their shared future. And sometimes, Michelle reflected, life's detours lead right where you're meant to be if you have the courage to follow the uncharted path.